Hey, Home Critic here, and welcome back to my channel. As promised, here's my review for Neighbors 2, the follow-up to what I thought was a pretty decent comedy film, and I gotta say, this comedy film is just as good. Now, usually Seth Rogen cranks out a comedy movie every year or two for the sake of it, and they're not always the best because I feel like there are a lot of the same jokes or it's a lot of the same Seth Rogen character, just in a different setting or in a different premise. And usually it's like decent, but I would say this is one of my favorite Seth Rogen films out of like the last maybe three or four because I feel like comedy sequels usually are unnecessary and they're usually not as funny as the predecessor. But this one is. And I would also say, as a comedy sequel, it sort of makes sense. Because sometimes they do it for the sake of doing it. But this time, it sort of makes sense that the fraternity moved out, and Seth Rogen and his wife are pretty much having like a nice time in their suburban neighborhood. But they're deciding to move out, and right before they move out, a sorority decides to move in right next to them. And so that kind of makes sense to see it kind of from a different perspective. This time with a group of females living in the house next to them. And I would say while this movie still has its generic Seth Rogen juvenile humor involving dicks, weed, adult toys, of course, and just like some weird bromance elements in it, I would say that this movie is still entertaining. You're still gonna laugh. You're still gonna have a good time with it. And like I said, I still like Seth Rogen as a character. And I think his character in this movie is a little bit easier to deal with because he's not playing like the man child that he usually does. He's a father. He has another kid on the way. He has some responsibilities. I mean, he's still kind of irresponsible to some degree, but I think him and his wife, Rose Byrne, in this movie, is it Rose Byrne? Rose Bryne? Him and Rose play a really good comedy duo in this movie. I feel like as parents, as messed up parents, they do a really good job together, and I think that they have like a little bit of comedic chemistry between them. And it's really nice to see Seth Rogen have chemistry in a comedy movie with someone besides James Franco for once. Zac Efron's character in this movie is also pretty funny. He pretty much does the best he could do with him. I mean, he's still kind of a frat guy, but I mean, no longer in a fraternity because he's graduated. So he's kind of in that weird state where like he doesn't know what to do with his life. And I just think it's kind of really funny the way his character is trying to seek value from others. And I think he does a pretty good job. He plays on one side for the first half of the movie and then switches to the other side. And there's not really much to say. I mean, I think that the three main characters kind of work together pretty well, and there's not really much to say about them. None of the jokes are really huge. I didn't leave the theater going like one joke was like really, really, really big. It was just a very entertaining, funny experience throughout. So that's why I liked it. Now let's talk about the sorority, who's led by Chloe. And I think the sorority element was pretty interesting, and I like that. I like the direction they took with it. Basically, she's a freshman, and she goes to a frat party, and she basically sees how sexist frat parties can be. And her character is kind of a little bit more aware, and she doesn't really like that females were basically being sexualized at this party, and like the whole reason why they were invited was for guys to have sex with them, and she wanted to form a sorority for where girls could have parties for themselves where they didn't have to feel like they were being objectified. And I thought that was a really clever take on a sorority because that's not what I was expecting going into this movie. I was expecting just a bunch of girls doing the traditional sorority stuff, but I like that they added this little twist to it. She goes against the system and says we want to party and we want to party our way. We don't want to just dress up in short skirts and high heels. We want to like dress comfortably and do things that we like. And I really like that. And there were a couple feminist arguments thrown into there, but it's not like, in a way that makes you like scoff or go like, why is this in this movie? It's just, a group of college girls who are, aware of some of the sexist things happening in their society. And I think that it makes sense because, they're in college. They're not exactly just going to go along with the status quo. They're going to question things. And I like that the girls in this movie do. And, it was just a little way to make the movie a little bit more than just a comedy movie, but again, it doesn't take away from the comedy portion. It's not trying to send a very strong message. I mean, it has a message, but it's not its primary purpose. It was just something to add a little extra layer to the movie, so that way it wasn't just another generic film. And so overall, I thought the movie was really good. It was really funny. If you're looking for a comedy movie, this is probably one of the best ones you're gonna find this summer. There aren't really many other comedy movies coming out besides Central Intelligence with Kevin Hart and The Rock. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Decent comedy sequel. Wouldn't mind seeing another one. And let me know what you think. If you saw it, let me know in the comments down below. What would you grade it as a comedy sequel? And also let me know what's your favorite Seth Rogen comedy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.